My ex and I broke up and were never married when I was pregnant with our youngest child, who's now a tween, and our oldest is a young teen. Ex moved 20 hours away when our youngest was 5 months old. He was following a better job. Plus, he was bored of our home state and wanted a change. He told me this before he left, and when I asked about the kids, he told me he'd still be an involved dad, just at a distance. I have primary custody. He sees them for 3 weeks in the summer and every other Christmas and Thanksgiving. It's not a lot, and the kids aren't very close to him. They have grown to enjoy the time with him less as they get older. Part of this is because they don't feel like he makes enough of an effort. Another part is that he got married 2 years after the move, and he has more children with his current wife. So the kids feel replaced. I can't blame them. So I put them into therapy to help them through this. I hardly ever hear from my ex or his wife. I get 3 emails from him a year, and maybe 5 replies if I'm lucky, which are him giving me dates, me asking him questions, and getting replies to those. The kids don't have a close relationship or any type of bond with their half-siblings. Sunday morning, we got the shock of our lives when my ex's wife showed up with her and ex's kids. She said she came to get my kids to spend the day with them so they could be with her and their half-siblings. My kids said they didn't want to go and walked away without saying anything else to her. She looked so offended at the door and told me to make sure they got ready. I told her no and told her she didn't get to just arrive. I told her they were spending Mother's Day with me, their mom. Then I closed the door and she stayed with her kids for a few minutes before leaving. Apparently she got home later that night. They flew apparently because both she and my ex sent numerous emails saying I should have sent the kids with her and made them celebrate her for a change, since she's been their stepmom most of their lives, and they have siblings who wanted to see them. Ex also claimed, since I refused, I should have invited them in to spend some time all together. They called me a witch and unreasonable. This continued all day yesterday. Am I the idiot for not making my kids go with my ex's wife and their children? What? Who flies from out of state with no notice to get children that aren't theirs? What if you've been at the grocery store, the beach, someone was sick, at church, I could go on and on. This is so off the wall that I'm actually shocked. Obviously, not the idiot, but I want to call the wife myself and ask her a ton of questions about what was going through her mind. This had to be pre-planned by a few days at a minimum to get the plane tickets. Ex's wife has to be absolutely bat crap to even think this was a good idea, let alone show up at OP's door. I'm totally going to be an involved parent to an infant and a toddler from 20 hours away. OMG, that's freaking hilarious. Your ex is a moron. So is his wife. Honestly, I would have assumed she was trying to abduct your kids. But you say you have primary custody? Jesus, the gall of this woman. This random woman sees your children 1/12, if that, of the year. She flew to your house without warning on Mother's Day to demand that your children spend time with her instead of their own mother? I would have sprayed her with a garden hose and yelled to get off my property. Just what an absolute idiot. Bloody loving the garden hose suggestion. Honestly, it makes me happy for you that this stupid lady decided to waste her own time. It's like she took revenge on herself for wasting your time by wasting so much more of her own. LMAO. I'm glad you and your kids seem to have a healthy sense of self-worth too. I just realized she probably spent more on tickets for your kids' flights. LOL, she double penalized herself. Yeah, the gall of these people. I just can't. I'm so sorry you're dealing with their delusion and that they're bombarding you with their terrible nonsense. You might want to revisit your custody agreement that bars unannounced visits and demands from a stepmother who barely has any contact with your children. Tell them both to pound sand. You don't owe her anything. And I strongly suspect that your children will not be going to visit Daddy-O this summer. My wife, 32, and I, 32 male, had some compromises to make with extracurricular activities. My wife grew up doing a lot of them. She pretty much never had free time, and her parents are pretty against it for their kids. She did gymnastics, softball, basketball, soccer, dance, and music while growing up. My family was more laid back, and that worked for me. I swam and did art sometimes, but none of it was super competitive and serious. My wife did a lot more competitive stuff and was always serious and going for pro. When we were discussing kids, she said she wanted the kids to be raised the same as her. I didn't agree with that, so we agreed we wouldn't force it on them. We wouldn't overwhelm them, 2 or 3 at the absolute most at a time, and we wouldn't make them do the more competitive sport teams if they didn't want to, but if they wanted to, it wouldn't be stopped either. We have 4 boys. Our older 2 are very into sports, and they take it seriously and want to play on serious teams. But our younger boys are the opposite and really don't like team sports. One favors swimming and the other favors rock climbing, but neither want to do either seriously. My wife wanted them to follow in their older brother's footsteps and at least do football on a serious team that their brothers were a part of and have since progressed from. I disagreed and referenced back to our prior agreement. She disagreed with me and said they should be on teams and more serious about sports. My wife brought her parents into this, and all 3 of them tried to tell me why I was wrong. The in-laws said kids with free time are going to grow up to be delinquents, and I was the exception to that. They also said the younger boys aren't going to be tough enough for high school and beyond if they don't learn something more solid in terms of sports. I asked what any of this has to do with them being tough and was ignored. My wife said I was being disagreeable for no reason and that I was so unreasonable. I grew frustrated and told her that she was using her parents to gang up on me and that we had an agreement, and she was refusing to stick to it, even though I never interfered with what our older boys wanted. She told me that they made the right choices. She wanted our younger boys to do the same. She said they're missing out on the pressure that all kids need to experience young and the expectation that being part of a serious team brings. Her parents said my wife is right, and I need to see sense and stop being selfish. I lost my temper and told my in-laws this has nothing to do with them, and told my wife she was totally wrong for bringing her parents into this and trying to back me into a corner, and I was not okay with any of it. They're mad at me for making it a fight. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. Your wife and in-laws are telling your kids that their true, authentic selves aren't good enough. Sometimes it's good to push kids a little bit out of their comfort zones so they continue to challenge themselves and try new things. But wanting them to abandon their identities could create some deep wounds. Keep standing up for them and continue to celebrate their true, authentic selves. I'm a teacher, and one of my big bugbears is parents who overload their kids with extracurriculars and don't allow them the opportunity to learn how to be bored and fill their own time. That's as much a life skill as being part of a team. Her upbringing was so rigid and devoid of practicing independent thought that she needed to drag her parents into the middle of her marriage to fight her battle. Stick to your guns and don't be bullied by your wife and her parents. They're trying to make your boys compete against each other, and that'll only end badly. Sit down with your 2 younger boys and ask them what they want to do and support them in it, but don't allow them to be pushed into sports they don't want to do. My sister-in-law cannot physically have children, but she did adopt her daughter, Tween. About 2 years ago, she started harping on her husband a lot about wanting to adopt another baby, and he was never on board. It wasn't too long after she started expressing her desire to adopt another baby that I became pregnant. At first, my sister-in-law just didn't say much of anything to me, but when I was around 5 months, she really started messing with me. She started inviting me over all the time and often put it in my head that I wasn't capable of taking care of a child because I have a history of depression. She was constantly saying, "I'm worried about you," or "I fear you'll have postpartum psychosis." And she said everything in such a way that I actually started believing her and messed with my head nearly every night. This continued until I was nearly at my due date, but it increased a little every time. Her last couple of comments were, "I'm not sure if you can handle it, and if something goes wrong, I'm going to have to fight my brother for custody of the baby. And you know I'll take custody of the baby if you can't handle it." And it got to my head so much that I stupidly thought she was just showing concern and not being a manipulative idiot. Anyway, I gave birth in October, and my sister-in-law came over to see the baby when she was a couple of weeks old. When she was holding her, she started to cry, and I went to take her back, and she shooed me away and said, "No, she's fine," and just started bouncing my kid until she eventually fell asleep. Unfortunately, I did have PPD, and I just didn't say anything. I clammed up, and as soon as she left 2 hours later, I lost it, bawled my eyes out while holding my daughter, and honestly, it made my PPD worse, if anything. Because of that interaction, I didn't want anyone near my daughter or to hold her. I ended up checking myself into therapy. I'm loads better now, but through therapy, I've developed a huge, overdue, shiny spine. Through therapy and some realization, I can now see that my sister-in-law was using manipulation tactics to make me feel less than, so I would give her custody of my daughter. Well, she asked me last week if she could come steal the baby away for some snuggles. I told her no. She asked why, and I was honest, and I said I didn't trust her because of all her comments throughout my pregnancy and her refusal to hand my daughter back to me as I requested when she was here. So no, she wasn't allowed around my baby at all. She argued that I couldn't just cut her off with no warning, that this just proves that she was right and that I'm clearly having a manic episode, and told me that I'm simply unable to see that I'm potentially putting my baby in danger and that I should be allowing family, aka her, to take the baby so I can get my head on right. I blocked her off everything, but she's now getting my mother-in-law involved and causing problems for my husband. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. She's unhinged. Now, this is a perfect example of gaslighting. She went out of her way to make you feel like you were going crazy to get her way. Protect your child at all costs, because she's made it clear she's a master manipulator. One person in this story is in some serious need of mental health intervention, and it's not OP. Sister-in-law's off her rocker. She's not of sound mind herself. Now she's recruiting other family members to pile on? Oh, heck no. Sister-in-law and any of her flying monkeys who are supporting her delusions need to be cut off, and under zero circumstances allowed access to the child. The husband needs to get a matching spine. Document everything. She probably already called CPS. I would not let the baby out of your sight with any family member. They may believe her about your mental health, and she's probably been manipulating them while she was manipulating you. Your husband needs to man up and realize the seriousness. Does he understand that she said she would fight him legally for his baby? Has she been working on him to doubt you? Protect your house, girl. Tell your husband to wake up and don't do anything stupid like sneak the baby out for a visit. So I, 18 female, have been sick for the past 2 days with a fever. 1 second I'm super hot, the next I'm not. Since my body temperature is all over the place, I've mostly been wearing a robe around the house. This morning I still wasn't feeling well, and I asked a friend of mine if they could get me some cold and flu medicine since I was out and my parents were at work. They said sure. They were in a rush to get to school, so I asked if I could meet them outside and grab the medicine so they wouldn't have to stop their car. My friends arrived, and since I was just laying down recovering, I was only in my robe. I figured it'd be fine since it was mid-thigh length and I would only be outside for a second. So I went outside, got the medicine, and my friend left. On my way back inside, my neighbor, 50 female, came outside and started yelling at me. She told me it was disgusting that I was dressed like that outside for all to see, and really started yelling at me. I felt like it wasn't a big deal, so I told her that I was outside for less than a minute, and this conversation was longer than the time I was actually outside for. She told me I was being disrespectful and told me to imagine if her husband or someone else was to see me dressed like that. Here's where I might be the idiot. I told her that if I had to worry about her husband seeing me when I was still fully covered, then she was married to a creep and just should have made some better choices on who to marry. She gasped loudly and kept yelling at me, so I eventually just said I wasn't feeling well and went inside. Apparently, my neighbor ended up talking to my mother when she came back home, and she told her what happened. My mother says I was extremely rude and shouldn't have said those things, and I have to apologize. I don't think I was in the wrong since it was literally only for a minute, and my robe covered everything anyway. So am I the idiot? Not the idiot. You were fully covered in a robe. She basically threw a hissy fit over your legs. Also, you didn't even bring up her husband. She did. She shouldn't have brought him into the equation if she didn't want to clap back about how he'd be creepy. I wouldn't apologize for anything. If anything, she owes you one for berating you like that. I wouldn't be surprised if this lady told your mother a different series of events. I'm in my 50s, female, and if I'd seen you outside in your robe getting meds from a friend, I would have asked if you were okay and if you needed anything. I also have gone out to get the mail in pajamas when I'm sick. You're very not the idiot, and I hope you feel better. I, 26 female, have a younger sister, Lily, 24, who's been with her fiancé, Mark, 28 male, for 3 years. They've always seemed really happy together, and they plan to marry next summer. Lily and I have always been close, but she can get pretty intense and a bit paranoid about relationships. A few weeks ago, Lily told me about her plan. She wanted to test Mark's loyalty by having her friend, Sarah, flirt with him at a party to see how he'd react. I told her it was a terrible idea and that she should just trust him, but she was dead set on it. She said she needed to be sure Mark wouldn't cheat on her once they were married. So Sarah went ahead with the plan last weekend at a party. Lily said Mark was nice but didn't flirt back, and even mentioned he was engaged. But Lily was still upset because she felt he didn't shut Sarah down forcefully enough. I thought this whole thing was unfair to Mark. He had no idea he was being tested, and I felt terrible for him. So I ended up telling him what Lily did. He was shocked and hurt but thanked me for being honest with him. Now Lily is furious with me. She says I betrayed her and ruined her relationship. She won't talk to me, saying I overstepped big time. Our parents are split on this. Mom thinks I did the right thing, but Dad says I should have stayed out of it. Mark is now reconsidering the engagement, and Lily has cut me off completely. I'm feeling torn and guilty. I don't know if I did the right thing by telling Mark, or if I should have stayed out of it. Am I the idiot? And if I am, how do I fix this? Should I try to repair my relationship with Lily? Should I reach out to Mark again or give him space? Your sister isn't mature enough for marriage and is looking for reasons to cause drama. Either she's bored, or she cheated, or came close to cheating, and is projecting her guilt onto the man. Your dad is also an idiot. Think about this. She gave him a test, and he passed with flying colors, but she's still mad that he didn't do well enough somehow? He passed the test she created and roped her equally terrible friend into, and she's angry at the result, even though it's the one she said she wanted. Your sister needs help, not a husband. Honestly, her fiancé couldn't win. If he had been too rude, she probably would have been angry. She wanted something she could hold over his head for the rest of their lives, a weapon to use against him whenever she wanted to get her way. It's for the best he's reconsidering things. I hope he leaves her. I think it's probably some TikTok BS. Schoolgirl mind games have been a thing for a long time, but this sort of crap seemed to have died out until TikTok showed up. OP, you didn't ruin her relationship. Her stupid loyalty test did. You just told the truth. At this point, you should stay far away from this situation. Let Lily and Mark figure out their relationship.